a spring morning on the coast of Suruga. The beach is white. The pine forest runs along the shore for 7 kilometers, 50,000 trees, their roots deep in the sand and their branches shaped by the sea wind into the specific forms that a lifetime of wind gives to things that grow beside it. The sea is calm, the bay of Suruga is wide, and the water is clear, and in the distance, rising above everything, the mountain, Fuji, not the tourist mountain, not the World Heritage Site, the mountain as it was before those categories existed, the mountain as the center of the sky, the place where the earth meets what is above the earth, the mountain that the Japanese have been looking at for as long as the Japanese have been looking at anything. This is the landscape of the story of the Hagoromo, the robe of feathers, the garment of the heavens that a fisherman found hanging on a pine tree one spring morning and held in his hands for a moment before the story began. Miho no Matsubara, the pine grove of Miho, 3 words in Japanese that carry, in the Japanese cultural memory, the specific weight of one of the most beautiful places in the world. The Miho Peninsula extends into Suruga Bay from the coast of what is now Shizuoka Prefecture. It is a narrow finger of land, mostly sand, shaped over centuries by the currents of the bay and the forces that build and erode the coastlines of Japan. Along this coast, the pines, Kuromatsu, the black pine, the salt-resistant, wind-shaped tree that the Japanese tradition has planted and maintained along its coasts since ancient times. Not because the black pine is the most beautiful of trees in ideal conditions, but because in the conditions of the coast, in the salt wind and the sandy soil, it achieves something that sheltered trees cannot, the specific beauty of a thing that has found its form in difficulty. The pines of Miho have been famous for centuries. The Manyoshu, Japan's oldest poetry collection, compiled in the 8th century, contains poems about this shore. The view has been painted and written about by artists and poets for more than 1,000 years. And above the pines, Fuji, the mountain visible across the bay, rising above the horizon with the specific presence of a mountain so large that it creates its own weather and its own relationship with the sky. Hakuryo, the fisherman of the story. His name means white dragon, a name from the world of the sea, the world of the coast, the world of the person whose life is organized around the bay, and the weather and the specific knowledge of a person who has been on the water long enough to understand it in the way that only experience gives. He was out early. Spring mornings on Suruga Bay have a quality that the tradition has always valued, the particular freshness of the air after the winter, the lightness that comes when the season turns, the specific quality of the sea in the morning before the wind comes up and before the sun is fully high. He walked along the shore. He looked at the sea. He looked at the pines. And he saw something on one of the branches. A robe. Not a fisherman's coat. Not a traveler's cloak. Something entirely different. A garment of extraordinary beauty, unlike any fabric he had ever seen, unlike any color he could name. Light seemed to come from it rather than reflect from it. The weight of it was not the weight of ordinary cloth. He reached out. He touched it. He began to take it. She appeared. From where exactly, the story does not specify. From the trees, from the air, from the space between the visible world and the world that is visible only when it chooses to be. She was beautiful. The tradition is consistent on this. The celestial beings of the Japanese stories are beautiful in a way that the human world recognizes as beauty, but cannot fully account for. Not the beauty of a person who is very attractive, but the beauty of a different order of being that has chosen a form the human eye can receive. She spoke. Please, that is mine. Return it to me. The fisherman stopped. He looked at the woman. He looked at the robe in his hands. He looked at the woman again. He said, "What is this?" She said, "It is the Hagoromo, the feather robe, the robe of the celestial. Without it, I cannot return to my home." She said the word for home in a way that indicated the home was not anywhere on this shore, not anywhere on this coast, not anywhere in this world. The home was above. The home was the sky and what is beyond the sky. The home was where she had come from and where she needed to go. The fisherman hesitated. This is the human moment at the center of the story, not the beauty of the robe, not the beauty of the woman, not the extraordinary nature of what was happening on an ordinary spring morning on a familiar shore. The hesitation. He wanted to keep it. This too is human. The beautiful thing, encountered unexpectedly, produces the impulse to hold it, to own it, to prevent it from going where beautiful things go when you do not hold them. He thought, I will keep it. I will take it home. It will be a treasure, something no one else has, something that will mark this morning as different from all the other mornings on this shore. He held it, and then he looked at her, the woman who had come from wherever she had come from, who could not return without the thing he was holding, who was not a threat, who was not a danger, who was simply asking for what was hers. He said, "Dance for me, and I will return it. Show me the dance of the celestial, the dance that no one from this world has seen, and the robe is yours." She agreed, but she asked, "Give it back first." He hesitated again. "If I give it back first," he said, "how do I know you won't simply fly away?" She answered him, "Utagai wa ningen ni ari, ten ni itsuwari nakimono wo." Doubt exists in the human world. In heaven, there is no falsehood. These words, 11 syllables in the Japanese, 2 lines that have been spoken in the theater and in the telling of a story for 600 years. The fisherman heard them, and the tradition says he was ashamed, not frightened, not overawed, ashamed, the specific shame of a person who has been shown through someone else's clarity the smallness of their own thinking. He had been applying the logic of the human world to someone who was not from the human world. He had been asking, "How do I know you won't lie to me?" And she had answered, "That question makes sense where you come from. It does not apply where I come from." He returned the robe, without further conditions, without negotiation, without the small contracting of the spirit that would have said, "Wait, let me think about this." He held it out. She took it. She put it on. And the morning changed. The dance. This is what the story was building toward. Not the encounter, not the negotiation, not the moment of the fisherman's shame, the dance. She put on the robe, and from the air around her, from wherever the music of the celestial world comes from, music arrived. Not from instruments the fisherman could see, from the air itself, the particular music of a world above the world, the music that exists on the other side of what the human ear can ordinarily reach. She began. The No Play's description of the dance is the most famous account. The playwright Zeami, who shaped the tradition of the celestial dance in the 15th century, understood that the dance could not be described directly. It could only be approached the way you approach the sun, not by looking at it, but by the light it casts. She danced the moon palace. She danced the turning of the spheres. She danced the world above the world as seen from within it. The view from above of the bay and the pines and the mountain and the sea. The fisherman watched. He had seen many things. He had been on the water in all conditions. He had seen the sun rise over the bay, and the storm come in from the ocean, and the light on the water at the moment when the day turns from one color to another. He had not seen this. He would not see it again. She rose, slowly at first, the way the dance moved from the shore to the air above the shore, the sand still visible below her, the white beach, the dark line of the pines, the bay opening out behind her. She praised the shore as she rose. This detail is in the no play. As she ascended, the celestial woman looked down at the place she was leaving and spoke of its beauty. The white sand, the blue water, the pines that have been here since before the story, and will be here after the story is no longer told. The fisherman standing at the water's edge, getting smaller as she rose higher. She praised it, not reluctantly, with full attention, the attention of someone who knows. They are seeing it for the last time. She moved over the mountain, over Ishitaka, the lower mountain east of the bay, and then above Fuji, the great mountain that has been the backdrop of the story from the beginning, that has been visible through every scene, that has waited at the edge of the story for the moment when it becomes the center. She passed over Fuji. She disappeared into the clouds above the peak. She was gone. The fisherman after. He stood on the shore where the morning had been an ordinary spring morning and was now something else. The robe was gone. The woman was gone. The music had stopped. The bay was the bay. The pines were the pines. The mountain was the mountain. He had seen it. This is what the story gives the fisherman. Not the robe, not the woman, not the thing he had tried to hold, but the having seen. The dance is gone, but the person who watched the dance is not the same person he was before he watched it. The fisherman who walked along the shore that morning looking for fish and found a robe on a pine branch is gone too. In his place, the person who returned the robe, who heard the words about human doubt and celestial truth, who watched the dance that no human eye had watched before. This is the gift the story offers, not the keeping, not the possession, not the holding of the beautiful thing against its will, but the moment of genuine encounter, the real meeting, the thing that happens between the human and the divine, when the human stops trying to keep what cannot be kept and simply receives what the divine has to give. The dance, the words, the moment of shame, that was also the moment of grace. Fuji, the mountain at the edge of the story, the mountain over which the celestial woman disappeared. Fuji-san, 3,776 meters, the highest mountain in Japan, a stratovolcano, dormant since 1707, when the Hoei eruption sent ash across the Kanto plain, and the original pine known as the Hagoromo no Matsu was lost to the sea. A mountain so symmetrical that it looks like the idea of a mountain as much as an actual mountain, the specific shape that a child draws when asked to draw a mountain, the cone, the snow on the peak, the presence that fills the sky above the horizon. The Japanese have been looking at Fuji since before the records began. The Manyoshu has poems about it. The Kokinshu has poems about it. Every major tradition of Japanese art has engaged with it. The paintings, the woodblock prints, the poetry, the pilgrimages, Hokusai's 36 views of Fuji, Hiroshige's depictions, the ukiyo-e tradition that made the mountain one of the most recognizable images in the world. In 2013, Fuji became a UNESCO World Heritage Site, not as a natural site, as a cultural one. The designation, Fujisan, sacred place and source of artistic inspiration, not just the mountain and everything the mountain has meant to the people who have lived beside it, the prayers, the paintings, the climbs, the specific way that a mountain can become the center of a culture's imagination. And Miho no Matsubara was included in that designation as one of the views of Fuji, one of the places from which the mountain is seen at its most fully itself. The story of the Hagoromo is part of the reason Miho is part of the reason Fuji is a World Heritage Site. The dance over the mountain is part of what the mountain means. The No play, Hagoromo, one of the most performed plays in the entire repertoire of No theater, one of the most beloved, one of the most technically demanding. The play is attributed to Zeami Motokiyo, the playwright and theorist who, in the 15th century, brought No to its classical form, who codified its aesthetics, who wrote the treatises that still define how the art understands itself. Zeami understood the Hagoromo story as the perfect material for No, because it is entirely about what No is entirely about, the moment of contact between the human world and the world that is more than human. The celestial woman is the Shite, the main character, the one whose inner life the play illuminates. The fisherman is the Waki, the witness, the human through whose eyes the audience experiences the encounter. The dance in the No play is one of the most famous extended dances in the tradition. The celestial woman dances the moon palace. She dances the turning of the sky. She dances herself home. The actor who plays this role must achieve in the movement of the body what the story describes, the specific quality of beauty that is not of this world, the grace that has not been acquired through practice, but is the natural expression of a being that inhabits a different relationship to space. This is what Zeami called the flower, the mysterious quality that makes the performance something more than skill. Tennyo, the celestial woman, the heavenly maiden, the figure who appears at the intersection of the human and the divine in the Japanese tradition. She is not a goddess exactly. The goddesses of the Japanese tradition are the kami, the divine presences that inhabit specific places and specific functions in the natural and human world. The Tennyo is something different. She belongs to the world above the world, the celestial realm that the Buddhist cosmology understands as one of the layers of existence, a world of beauty and lightness that is not the human world, but is not yet the realm of full enlightenment. She is associated with the moon, with the sky, with music and dance, with the specific beauty of things that are beyond the ordinary conditions of the earthly life. The Kaguya-hime, the princess of the bamboo, the woman who came to earth and spent her years among humans, and returned to the moon. She is of the same world. The difference, Kaguya-hime was kept from returning. She suffered in the keeping. The celestial woman of Miho was returned her robe. She danced. She rose. The story ends differently because the fisherman made a different choice. Two stories, one about a celestial woman kept, one about a celestial woman returned. The Takatori Monogatari, the tale of the bamboo cutter, the oldest surviving prose narrative in Japanese, Kaguya-hime. She came to Earth from the moon. She was found in the light of a bamboo stalk by an old man cutting bamboo in the forest. She was raised as his daughter. She was beautiful beyond what the world could prepare for. She refused every suitor. She gave each of them an impossible task. She was always in the part of herself she kept for herself, somewhere else, looking at the moon, feeling the pull of the world she had come from and could not return to as long as the robe that would carry her home had not arrived. When the moon people came to take her back, she wept. She had not expected to weep. She had been waiting for this moment all her time on Earth. But the Earth had given her things she had not expected. The love of the old couple who had raised her. The specific warmth of a human household. The moon people put the robe on her, and she forgot. The robe erases the memory of the Earth. She rose. She looked down. She was gone. The Hagoromo woman did not stay, but she chose to dance. She chose to give the fisherman what he had asked for. She rose through her own agency. She was not taken. She departed. One story, the celestial kept, then taken. The other, the celestial, briefly held, then freely returned. Both. The mountain at the end, the figure rising, the world below growing small and beautiful. The pine tree, the Hagoromo no Matsu, the pine of the feather robe, the specific tree on which the robe was found, the tree that became the marker of the story, the material evidence that the story happened here and not somewhere else. The original tree is gone. In 1707, when Mount Fuji erupted for the last time, the eruption produced a massive ash fall and subsequent land movement. The original Hagoromo no Matsu, the pine of the story, was lost to the sea in the changes that the eruption set in motion. A second tree took its place. The second tree is gone too. By 2010, the second Hagoromo no Matsu had declined sufficiently that the decision was made to designate a third. The third generation pine stands now on the beach at Miho. It is young by the standards of the story it represents, about 200 years old, a curved black pine, shaped by the sea wind, standing at the edge of the forest where the beach begins. The story survives the death of the trees that mark its location, because the story is not in the tree. The tree is the marker. The story is in the telling. But the marker matters. The tree matters. The specific place on a specific shore, where a specific fisherman stood one spring morning and held a robe in his hands, and made a choice. This matters. The story needs a place. The place holds the story. The tree marks the place. The Swan Maiden. The story of the Hagoromo is not only Japanese, it is one of the most widely distributed story types in the world. The scholars call it the Swan Maiden tale, the celestial woman who descends to earth, whose robe is taken, who is prevented from returning. The type appears across Eurasia. In the Norse tradition, the Valkyries who leave their swan skins on the shore and are found by men who take the skins and keep the women. In Korean, Chinese, and Mongolian traditions, the celestial women who come to bathe in earthly waters and find themselves trapped when their heavenly garments are stolen. In Celtic traditions, the Selkie, the seal woman who sheds her seal skin on the beach and is kept from the sea by the man who hides it. what the wide distribution means. This story speaks to something in the human condition that is not specific to any culture, the encounter with the celestial or the otherworldly, the impulse to keep what is beautiful, the question of what happens when you succeed in keeping it, the cost of the keeping, to the kept and to the keeper. The Miho version is unusual in its resolution. In most versions, the man keeps the robe, the woman stays. She becomes a wife and mother. Eventually she finds the robe and leaves. The story ends in loss. In the Miho version, the fisherman gives back. The story ends in beauty. This is the choice the Japanese tradition made when it shaped this version of the story. This is the story it wanted to tell. Suruga Bay, the bay that the story looks out over, the deepest bay in Japan. The floor of Suruga Bay descends to 2,500 meters in the Suruga Trough, the deepest part of the bay, where the Philippine Sea Plate is being pushed under the Eurasian Plate in the slow geological grinding that created the mountains of Japan. From the shore at Miho, none of this is visible. What is visible? The blue water, the specific blue of a deep bay in clear weather, a blue that has no gray in it, no green, just the pure blue of water that is both cold and clear. Across the bay, the Izu Peninsula, and beyond the peninsula, the Pacific, and rising above everything, Fuji, to the north and west, the mountain that organizes the entire vista, that the eye returns to even when it is trying to look at something else. The fishermen of Suruga Bay have been on this water for thousands of years. The fish of the bay, the sakura ebi, the cherry blossom shrimp, the small pink crustaceans that are fished in the bay and are considered one of the delicacies of the region. These are what men like Hakuryo were looking for on the morning the story happened. The fisherman's world, the boat, the bay, the fish, the mountain, the specific knowledge of a person who has spent their life in one place until the place is inside them. This is who the story happened to. Not a hero, not a warrior, a fisherman on a familiar shore on an ordinary spring morning. The robe. What was it? The tradition describes it without being able to fully describe it, because the thing it is trying to describe is not quite describable in the language of the world that does not have it. It was made of feathers, not the feathers of birds, the feathers of the celestial, the material that the beings of the world above the world use to make the garments that allow them to move between the worlds, that allow them to descend to earth and to rise back to the sky. It was light. This is consistent across the versions. The robe weighed nothing, or it weighed the specific nothing of a thing that belongs to a different set of physical laws than the ones that govern ordinary cloth. It was luminous. Light came from it, not reflected light, the light that ordinary beautiful things have when they catch the sun, but the light of the thing itself, the specific radiance of the celestial brought into the world of the ordinary. When she put it on, she could dance. When she danced, she could rise. When she rose, she could return. The robe was not only clothing, it was the connection between the world she was from and the world she was in. Without it, stranded, earthly, subject to the conditions of the earth. With it, herself, free, able to do what her nature allowed her to do. What was the dance? The tradition calls it the Suruga no Mai, the dance of Suruga. The specific dance that the celestial woman performed on the shore of Miho was absorbed into the tradition of Japanese court dance as the Suruga no Mai, the regional dance that the tradition says originated in this encounter. This is what the story offers, not only the experience of the dance for the fishermen who watched it, but the dance itself, carried down into the tradition, preserved in the forms of the court music and the no theater and the various traditions of Japanese movement that trace themselves back to the celestial. The dance was given, the dance was kept, not by the fisherman holding on to something that was not his, but by the tradition that received what the dance was and found the human forms that could carry it forward. The no play Hagoromo is the dance itself in the form that can be performed in a theater. The actor who dances the role of the celestial woman is performing what was given on that spring morning in a form that human bodies can embody, not the original dance. Nothing can be the original dance, but the inheritance of it, the human version of what the celestial offered to a fisherman on a beach who chose to give back what he had found. Zeami and the Flower, Zeami Motokyo, the playwright who shaped the Hagoromo into the form we know, the theorist who gave No its philosophical foundation, the artist who understood what the art was trying to do and wrote it down. He lived from 1363 to 1443. He worked under the patronage of the Ashikaga shogunate. He wrote, performed, and theorized the art of No through the most creative period of its development. His treatises, Ushikaden, the Flower, and the Transmission, Zeami's central concept, the flower, the hana, the quality that makes a performance not only skillful, but alive, not only correct, but moving, not only beautiful, but present. The flower is not the same as skill. Skill can be learned. The flower cannot be taught directly. It arises from skill when skill has been practiced long enough and deeply enough that something else emerges. The actor who has danced for years and has internalized the form to the point where the form expresses rather than constrains the presence of the person. This is where the flower grows. In the Hagoromo, the celestial woman's dance is the fullest expression of the flower concept. A being who is not performing beauty, but is beauty in motion, whose movement is not the result of practice and technique, but is the natural expression of what she is. The actor who plays this role is aspiring to something they cannot fully achieve, but the aspiring is the practice, and the practice, over years, approaches the flower. Miho today. The peninsula is still there. The beach is still white. The pines are still there. 50,000 of them, shaped by the sea wind, their roots deep in the sand. The third generation Hagoromo no Matsu stands near the Miho shrine, the Miho Jinja, the shrine that has been here since at least the Heian period, that holds in its keeping a fragment of cloth, said to be a remnant of the celestial robe. The cloth is not often shown. It appears occasionally at special exhibitions in the shrine building that the visitor reaches after walking the pine path called the Kami no Michi, the Road of the Gods. The Road of the Gods, a path through the pines that connects the beach to the shrine. The pines along this path are old. Their roots surface in the specific way of old pines in sandy soil. The bark dark, the crowns shaped by decades of sea wind. Walking this path, the visitor is in the same landscape that the story describes, the same light through the same kind of pines, the same sound of the sea nearby, the same air, salt, and pine resin, the specific smell of this particular coast. The mountain is still visible across the bay. On clear days, the view from the beach at Miho is the view that has been painted and written about and photographed for centuries. The pines in the foreground, the bay in the middle distance, Fuji rising above the horizon to the northwest, the view the celestial woman praised as she rose. The clean story. Among all the stories we have told in the long telling of Quiet Tales of Japan, the Hagoromo is perhaps the cleanest. Not simple. Clean. Clean in the sense of a window that is clear, through which you can see what is on the other side without the obstruction of accumulated grime. There is no villain. There is no betrayal. There is no death, no destruction, no vengeance. There is a fisherman who found something and almost kept it, and then chose not to. There is a celestial woman who was briefly held and then released. There is a dance. There is an ascent. There is the mountain at the end. The story offers something that the other stories in the tradition do not always offer: the possibility of the right choice. Anshin made the wrong choice, the promise he did not keep. Kiyohime ran barefoot through the mountains because of it. Tsuna made a small wrong choice on the 7th day when the demon wore his aunt's face. Hoichi was found in the graveyard, protected by the sutra with the one oversight that cost him his ears. Hakuryo held the robe. He hesitated. He almost kept it. And then he was told something true about himself and his world, and he let it in, and he made the right choice. He gave it back. She danced. She rose. The story ends in the ascent, in the beauty of the departure, in the view from above of a world that is beautiful, because a human being chose, in a specific moment, to let the beautiful thing go. The pines and the sea. These two things together have a particular meaning in the Japanese aesthetic tradition. Matsubara, pine grove. The word itself carries the specific image: the dark green of the pines against the blue of the sea, the white of the sand at the base of the trees, the contrast that Japanese art has found beautiful since the first poems were composed about it. The pine is an old tree, not in the way that the cedar is old, the massive trunk that takes centuries to develop. The pine is old in a different way, in the quality of its aging, the bark that darkens with years, the crown that finds its shape through the accumulated influence of the wind, the specific character of a tree that has been in the same place for a long time and shows it. The sea is always young. The wave that arrives has never arrived before. The water that touches the shore is touching it for the first time. These two things together, the permanence of the old tree and the perpetual newness of the water. This is the landscape of Miho. This is the landscape the tradition has always found beautiful. And this is where the story happened. At the meeting place of the old and the new, the permanent and the passing, the rooted and the free. What the story gives. The Hagoromo gives something that the other stories do not always give, a model for the encounter with beauty. We encounter beauty and we want to keep it. This is not a flaw. It is the natural response to the beautiful, the desire to have it near, to extend the encounter, to prevent the beautiful thing from going to wherever beautiful things go when they leave. Hakuryo felt this. He held the robe. He thought, I will keep it. I will make it mine. This is the human response. Understandable, even sympathetic. And then he was told, doubt exists in the human world. In heaven, there is no falsehood. He was told something about the difference between the world he was operating from and the world the robe came from. He gave it back, not because he stopped wanting it, but because he understood that keeping it would be keeping it wrongly, that the way to have the encounter with beauty is not to possess, but to receive. The dance, that is what he received. The dance he would not have had if he had kept the robe. The possession would have given him a beautiful cloth. The release gave him the celestial dance on the spring shore of Miho, with the mountain above the bay, and the music that came from nowhere visible. This is the story's gift, the demonstration that release gives more than possession. Sleep and the Ascent. There is something in this story that belongs to sleep in a specific way. The ascending. The celestial woman rose from the shore. She rose slowly at first. The dance was the rising. The music was the rising. The robe enabled the rising. She moved upward through the specific quality of the spring air above the bay, above the beach, above the pines, above the water, above the mountain, into the sky, into the clouds above the peak. Gone. Sleep is a kind of rising, not literally, not in the body, which becomes more still, more horizontal, more surrendered to gravity as sleep comes, but in the awareness. The awareness rises out of the ordinary plane of the day's concerns, the horizontal surface of the waking world with its specific anxieties and its specific tasks and its specific claims on attention, and rises into something else, the dream world, the world that is available when the ordinary world is set aside. The celestial woman rose through letting go of the earth. She could only rise because the fisherman had released what he held. Sleep comes through a similar release. The specific act of setting down the weight of the day, the specific choice to let the concerns that feel so heavy in the day be light for now. The robe is yours. Go. The mountain at the end. Every story we have told has its mountain. The mountain of Kurama, where Ushiwakamaru trained in the dark. The mountain of Ohara, where the Kenreimonin prayed. The mountains of Kumano, through which Anshin walked and did not walk back the right way. And now, Fuji. The mountain at the end of the Hagoromo is not a mountain of difficulty, not the mountain you must climb, not the mountain that tests you. It is the mountain that receives the departing. She rose over it. She disappeared into the clouds above the peak. She used it as the threshold between the world she was leaving and the world she was returning to. Fuji as threshold. This is an old understanding. The mountain that stands between the earthly and the celestial. The mountain whose peak is above the ordinary clouds, in the specific altitude where the conditions of the earth begin to give way to something else. The pilgrims who climbed Fuji understood this. They climbed to reach the place where the mountain meets the sky, not to conquer, to be at the boundary, to stand at the point where this world ends and the next one begins. The celestial woman did not climb Fuji. She passed over it. She was already on the other side of the boundary the mountain marks. She was going home. The shore at Miho, the morning after. The fisherman is standing where the dance was. The sand that her feet touched is the same sand. The pine that held the robe is the same pine. The bay is the same bay, but the morning is different. What does it mean to be in a place after something extraordinary has happened there? The place looks the same. The person standing in it is not the same. The specific quality of a place where something has happened that cannot unhappen. The sacred site, the place of memory, the shore where the dance was and where the dance will always have been? Hakuryo knew this. He could not unlearn what the morning had given him. He could not go back to the ordinary shore, the fishing shore, the shore that was just a beach with pines and the view of Fuji. The shore was now the shore where she had danced. The pine was the pine where the robe had hung. The mountain in the distance was the mountain she had passed over on her way back to wherever she was from. He was still standing there when the day advanced, and the sun moved, and the bay changed color from the morning blue to the afternoon blue. He would tell the story. Others would come to the shore. They would look at the pine. They would look at the mountain. They would understand what he had understood without having to see it themselves, that the beautiful thing, released, becomes more beautiful. The pines at Miho are still there. The bay is still there. The mountain is still there. The specific view from the shore that the celestial woman praised as she rose, the white sand, the dark pines, the blue water of the bay, the mountain above the horizon, its peak sometimes hidden in cloud, sometimes visible in the clear air that follows the cold front. The fisherman Hakuryo held a beautiful thing and almost kept it. He hesitated at the threshold of the choice, and then he heard, Utagaiwa ningen ni ari, ten ni itsuwari nakimono wo. Doubt exists in the human world. In heaven there is no falsehood. He was ashamed. He gave back the robe. She put it on. She danced. The music came from the air. The fragrance came with it. She praised the shore as she rose above it. She moved over the mountain. She disappeared into the clouds. The morning was ordinary before this. After this, the shore that carries the story, the pine that held the robe, the mountain that received her. The story is here, in the pines, in the view, in the specific quality of a spring morning on a shore where the earth once met the sky and the sky gave the earth a dance. The bay is quiet now. The pines are still. The mountain is in the distance, or hidden in the clouds, always there regardless. Let the story settle into the quiet it belongs to. The morning shore, the white sand, the dance, the ascent, the mountain. The Suruga dance today. Every year at the Miho shrine, the priests perform the ceremonies that have been performed here since before the records began. In the spring festival and the autumn festival, the dancers perform the Hagoromo no Mai, the dance of the feather robe. Not the celestial dance, the human version of it. The dance that the tradition has maintained as the memory of what was given on the spring shore by the being who danced on the way home. The Miho Bono, the festival fire performance. The outdoor No, performed in autumn at the pine grove. The play Hagoromo performed by torchlight, with the pines and the bay and the mountain as the backdrop that no theater can replicate. The actor in the celestial woman's role dances toward the water, dances toward the mountain, rises as the form allows. The audience sits on the beach. The torches light the stage. The pines are behind and above, and across the bay, Fuji. This is the living tradition, the story performed at the site of the story, the dance given back to the place that first received it. 600 years of performance at the location of the legend, the beach and the pines and the view and the mountain, unchanged. the story performing itself in the place it happened. The night and the dance. The story happened in the morning, but the telling of it belongs to the night. The morning of the shore, the spring light, and the bay, and the white sand. This is the setting. The night is when the story is received, when the listener lets the images settle into the quiet that the night provides. The pines at night, the specific quality of the pine grove at night, the sound of the needles in whatever wind is moving, the smell of pine resin stronger in the cool air, the darkness between the trees that is the particular darkness of a place that has been a sacred grove for a very long time, the bay at night, the mountain at night, its shape visible against the stars or invisible in the cloud, always present either way. The dance was given once, on a spring morning, to a fisherman who let go of what he was holding. It has been given again in every telling, in every performance of the No, in every festival at the shrine. And now, in this telling, in the night where you are, the robe is yours, the dance is the story, and the story is the dance, and the dance is ascending over the mountain, and the mountain is there whether you can see it or not, and the bay is wide, and the pines are old, and the sand is white, and the morning will come. What was given? In the long telling of Japan's stories, the Hagoromo stands apart, not because it is the oldest, not because it is the most famous, not because it involves the most dramatic events, but because of what it is about. Every other story has at its center a struggle. Kiyohime's pursuit, Hoichi's 3 nights, Ushiwakamaru's years in the dark, the Heike's long destruction, the Kenramen Inn's decades of grief, Komachi's beauty and its passing. These are the human stories: struggle, loss, endurance, the cost of being in the world with the things you love. The Hagoromo is different. It is a story about a single choice that was made correctly. One choice, one morning, one fisherman who held something beautiful and gave it back, and the giving back produced something that the keeping could never have produced. The dance, the ascent, the view of the shore as seen by someone rising above it, the mountain at the end. The story of Japan is mostly the story of struggle, the bells and the battles and the long grief of the survivors, and the mountains where the training happened in the dark. But the Hagoromo says, sometimes the right choice is possible. Sometimes the human being, faced with beauty, chooses correctly, releases it, receives what the release gives. The dance is the gift of the correct choice, and the dance is given every time the story is told. Every time someone hears it and understands what the fishermen understood on the shore at Miho, Utagai wa ningen ni ari, ten ni itsuari nakimono wo. The doubt is ours. The truth is the skies. Let it go.